Let me go to my guests. I am joined with the man himself, Ted Rall. Ted Rall's political cartoonist, syndicated columnist, host of TMI with the great, the one and only, the beautiful, the fantastic. There are not enough adjectives I can add to this, Manila Chan. Also with John Kiriakou, another fantastic guest. And that one is, I'm trying to remember these things off the top of my head. What is the one with John Kiriakou?
Deprogram.
Deprogram. Thank you. Deprogram. Check out both of those. Both of those are fantastic shows. Do both play Monday through Friday?
No. TMI with Manila is Monday through Friday, 10 Eastern. Deprogram is Wednesdays at 5 in the afternoon, so there's going to be 1 at 5 this afternoon Eastern, and 12 noon Saturday. Obviously it's a finicky schedule. We'll have to even it out.
It's okay. No worries. Yeah. Ted, we have nearly 4,000 people here today. We have nearly 4,000 people here today. I've never had a number this high. I'm not telling you that as a brag. I promise you I'm not. I'm more surprised by it myself, which is why I'm shocked to see it. But I'm also telling you that this is a good showing. And the audience at 10 a.m. when the show's over with, check out Ted Rall. The man is fantastic. And I brought him on the show because he is fantastic.
Thank you, Jamal.
Your historical knowledge is astonishing. And I've always been impressed by it. Ted has a book coming out called, what is it called? What's Left?
What's Left.
What's Left. When does that come out? Just so the audience would know.
It's out. You can buy
Excellent. That's right. I gave it a review on Amazon. Mm-hmm. You gave me an advance copy. I was able to read through it. Fantastic book. The Democrats are in the wilderness. They have no clue what to do. Radical transparency doesn't seem to be on the menu. So
no,
they are just going to be where they are. One of the parts I want to point out to this is on the issue of immigration. If I asked you, what do you think the point of view of Democrats who are immigrants are, or let's say people in this country who are immigrants are, which party do you think they favor at this point? And just to give you a heads up, Democrats had a 32-point lead in 2020. What do you think it is now, if you had to guess?
Oh, I think. Well, I mean, I know the answer is that they favor Republicans at this point, and that's a huge reversal, as you point out. I mean, it is shocking. But the Democratic, if I mean, I can
real quick, Ted. I want the audience to get into this as like a game show. Audience, tell me what you think the number is right now.
I
want the audience to tell me because this is a shocking number.
I bet
it was 32.
Way ahead.
Well, it was plus 32 in 2020. It is moving to the Republican sphere. You're right. But audience, tell me, what do you think?
Let's say plus 25 GOP.
Okay, you think it's plus 25. All right, audience, what do you think it is for GOP? And I'm going to show this right now. This is CNN talking about the immigration. By the way, this is during protests on issues of immigration, by the way.
Start off on the fact that immigrant citizens, immigrant voters, foreign-born voters have gone tremendously to the right on this issue in 2024 and 2025 versus where they were in 2020. Closest to a trust war in immigration. You go back to 2020. Democrats get this, held a 32-point lead on this issue. Immigrant voters were in the Democratic camp. Jump forward to 2024, 2025. Look at that shift, a 40-point shift.
Ted, that's a 40-point shift. How the hell does that happen?
Well, it happens when you deliberately leave the border open, right? I mean, I honestly don't understand. I'm as left as they come, I think. I don't understand what the basis was for Biden's policy back into 2021. I'd be curious. We have a Tapper book that gives us the behind the scenes workings of the senility and decline of President Biden, but we still don't have a behind the scenes policy book of the Biden administration. Like, why did they do this? Why did they not do that? And at some point, I mean, I don't know if it was tied into the pandemic or if it was just a reaction to Trump's kids in cages or what, but they basically left the southern border completely open, and it's not like it was even passive. They created an app to facilitate this, right? Like literally, like, come on over and make an appointment on the app, and then present yourself at Eagle Pass, Texas, or wherever. Line up, which people did dutifully, and they were admitted into the U.S. Basically, the word went out, the borders open, the Americans are letting everyone in, and they did. And the thing is that's bizarre because there was no real understanding of why that happened, but also there was no communication to the American people that ever sort of said, oh, by the way, so this is why we're doing this. We have a
Yeah.
low, we don't have enough employees to do unskilled labor. We need more. We have a population problem. Our consumer economy risks shrinking because of a low birth rate. Something. They just did it. There was no communicating whatsoever, no messaging.
No.
So even people like us who are news obsessed couldn't really tell you, even if we're trying to, like, at gunpoint, if to save our lives, if we were trying to say, why did the Biden administration open the border? We literally just don't know. And
I just assumed it was reflexive. I just assume Trump is an old girl on the border. He spent 4 years bashing immigrants. And so when Joe Biden got in, there was political pressure on him to not be Trump. And so I have to get rid of Trump's border policies, even if some are working. I have to, get rid of whatever, in which case all of these kids start coming over where parents will bring their kids to the border. Meaning it's almost like they took Joe Biden as a softer, cuddlier president because Trump left. And because of the political pressure that was on Joe Biden from his own political party, for example, and just to give an example, like right now, we have this taking place in New York. We know about the riots in California. I'm going to assume for the moment that let's say that this is not inspired by something more subversive. These people are Democrats for the most part, or at the very least, people who feel some kind of way about immigration, whether they're maneuvered or otherwise. These are the people who are out here. This is New York.
And I can't see if they've been successful.
Not just New York. This one is taking place, I believe, in Chicago. Look at all those people.
Mm-hmm.
Here's another one. This one is taking place. This is another one in Chicago. Hiding cops. Yes. Oh, I hate it when it does this. Right. Then you have another one in Atlanta. Meaning these have been taking place all over the United States, and they seem to be spreading. And there are like 1,000, if not 1,400 more that are planned. Democrats, this is what they think on this issue. It's so that's the pressure that's on Joe Biden. At least that was my take. Give me your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I have a different take on the protests. I think that the protests here, I think, if we look at the polls, it's really super interesting. Most Americans, this is obviously more Republicans than Democrats overwhelmingly, they want the border closed. They think people who are here illegally ought to be deported.
Yes.
But when you go into the raids and the hows, people don't like it.
Yes.
And so, there's everything comes down to execution, right? So if you say, I'd be the first to say, years before Donald Trump ever thought about running for president, I was writing columns saying that we ought to have a wall on the southern border, that we ought to protect American jobs. I'm an economic nationalist. I think we should be looking out for American citizens first. That's the job of any U.S. government, left or right, ought to be doing that. So it makes sense, right? You're not a country if you don't have a border. That's what
it's a leftist position.
You take a patch of land. You're like, this is my land, and then I decide who comes and goes, right? That's what a country is. And so, the idea of open borders makes no sense at all, and most Americans aren't in favor of it. But the execution of these deportations is so violent and cruel and degrading and disrespectful of human dignity that it's causing a lot of people, in the middle to be like, these are not all open border people, to say, fuck you. You can't do that to my friend, my neighbor. And let's not also forget, these people, most of them who came in illegally, it's like, okay, they came in illegally. They violated a law that the country itself didn't enforce. Okay. So it's sort of like if suddenly, in New York where the speed limit's 55, and, if you drive 60, you will never get a ticket. Okay. You have to drive at least 70 to maybe get a ticket. It's like, let's just say they start becoming assholes about the 55 mile an hour speed limit. people will say, okay, that's fair. The speed limit's 55, but don't be assholes about it. Like phase it in.
Don't snatch me out of my car and tase me
Yeah.
for driving 55, right?
Exactly. Give people a warning. Give
Yeah.
people a lot of warning tickets. Have lots of signs, messaging. Explain why speed kills, and it's about saving lives. And then you're going to be able to get buy-in. Okay. I mean, like in France, the speed limit is the speed limit. You go 1 mile an hour, 1 kilometer over you'll get a ticket. So, but the point is, same thing here. Imagine a scenario where the government just said, listen, sorry, but like we let you in, we know, but we shouldn't have, and now we're changing the policy. But we're going to give you $25,000 if you agree to leave the country. We're going to give you 6 months notice, so you can like wrap up your affairs. If you have a house, you can sell your house, get that money. We're not going to disrupt your life too much. And we're going to give you some money so you can get started when you go back home, which is a tiny amount of money considering what we spend on like Ukraine and Israel. It's nothing. And we just said, okay, so, we're sorry, we shouldn't have really let you in. And that's how and let's say you're not dragging people off the street. If you're really worried that they're going to vanish, maybe you slap an ankle bracelet on them, a monitoring bracelet, and you say, okay, we'll see you in 6 months. Don't make us come and get you. Fine. I think you wouldn't see these protests. But they've been kidnapping people off the streets. They've been dragging, moms away from their screaming children in the streets. They're government thugs. They're terrorists. Yes. They're goons. They're wearing masks. In many cases, we don't even really know that they work for the government, or much less are members of ICE. Who the fuck are these people? And I'm still waiting for a Second Amendment solution to this, because there will be. And when it goes through the courts, that person will walk, because if someone tries to kidnap you and you don't know who they are and they refuse to identify themselves, you are allowed to use deadly force to defend yourself. So that the point is that this is about the how. That's what these protests are about. Now, don't get me wrong. There's some people who are out there who are in favor of open borders, and they don't believe in immigration laws, all that. But I think the reason that this movement is now a growing movement, the first major rebellion since BLM, is because of that. It's because there's a lot of pent up frustration about the way this is being handled. And by the way, when we see like the images that you're showing now of the guy on the burning on the damaged Waymo taxi, that's like, again, it's pent up frustration. Americans don't like self-driving cars. That's a different talk.
It's like fuck that self-driving car.
When they get a chance to kill them, they do. So
all right. So 2 things. I agree with everything you just said. Kind of. Because I think I made this point yesterday. I was like, if you ask the American people, should you get rid of people who are committing crimes that are illegal aliens, they would say yes. Sure. They would agree. They would have no compunction. You might get like 60, 70% in the poll. Should you go after people who have committed no crimes, who pay taxes for the last 10 years, and who just so happen to overstay their visa? Oh, you're not going to get that yes.
No, you're not.
And to your point, it is the goon.
What was Ellis Island? Ellis Island was just the same, right? No, not one person had a visa to come to the United States who went through Ellis Island. Not one. They all showed up just like the French expression, like a hair on your soup. They just showed up, and the country was like, you don't have TV,
poor,
good enough. We need you to work,
Yeah, and 2, the other part that you make is, for me, why this is happening. You have goons going into a courtroom and snatching the guy as he walks out the courtroom.
Who, by the way, is following the law by showing up to court and to his
Yes. You have Trump deporting people to foreign countries that they don't even belong to. Right. You have these goons showing up in neighborhoods out of the blue, not even necessarily marked, and snatching people. And you get a lot of people who come around who say, what the hell are you doing? And then they're going to get aggressive because you have no markings on, so nobody knows who the hell that you are. Like, that shit is outrageous. And Trump has been sending his thugs to do this all across the United States. And so it's like, it's not shocking that you get a reaction from that. It's outrageous. Add in liberals who just hate Trump, who thinks it's outrageous also, meaning they may be dicey on the border thing because they were okay with Biden and Obama deporting like 4 million each. But they don't like the way you're doing it, as you point out. And they don't like Trump. So that's kind of a trifecta or a double of both.
Also,
that
there's an
they come
emotional
out.
component, JT. I mean, everybody knows illegal aliens. I mean, everybody does. Everybody, there are brothers. I mean, there are friends. There are colleagues. You know, I mean, I know some.
Husband and wives.
All you know, races and creeds. You know, it's like we just know them. They're everywhere.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of like when, you know, gay rights was taking off and everyone started to realize, wait, you're gay? I didn't know you were gay.
Yeah.
It's like everybody knew gay people.
I mean, I
you know,
guess
as a parenthetical, I think that's kind of the problem with the trans movement right now is not that many people know trans people because there aren't as many.
I think it's more complicated.
But yeah, it is more complicated. But I'm just saying
Yeah.
that's like a. But you know, part of it is, you know, if the percentage of trans people were as high as the percentage of, say, undocumented workers, you would, you know, it's different. It's emotional.
Yeah.
It's like, and it's kind of like every person I've ever known who was undocumented, and this is probably true of everybody who's listening. They weren't fucking around. They weren't gang members. They kept their heads low. They stayed out of trouble. You know, where I used to live in an area in the Hamptons where there were tons and tons of them. You could always tell who they were because for some reason they all had Illinois driver's license plates because Illinois like kind of doesn't really check to see if you're documented.
Really? I didn't know that.
But they all drove too slow, right? It's like they
didn't want to bring the
hit
cops
the
on
stop
them.
sign hard and waited and, you know, always used their turn signal. They always drove too slow. And I was like, oh, undocumented worker. That's how they are. They're like really trying to follow the letter of the law and keep their noses clean.
I think the
These are
problem.
people that you want to beat up and like brutalize? Really?
Well, Trump is racist. There's that.
Right.
Two, there's a component of this that seems to be used for political expedience. Kind of like the way, you know, they say, okay, we're going to take migrants and send them to New York, right? Okay, well, you're using them as a political cudgel. It's almost like you use them as a political prop. They're human beings, but you use them as a prop. It's an effective prop for what it was doing, especially with Adams in office saying, oh my God, this is outrageous. But you're effectively using them as a prop. And so you're now sending killers, the Marines, people who are trained to kill, to go and do crowd control, which is outrageous. I mean, like, it's one thing to say, okay, we're going to nationalize the National Guard. Okay, I think California is a massive state. They could handle their own, but whatever. But to say, okay, we're also going to send trained killers there to police Americans. And it's like, whoa, that's pretty astonishing. What justifies that? Nothing justifies that.
No.
And now you have these protests springing up all across the United States. I'll tell you what Colonel Wilkerson said. He said he thinks this is a prelude to a takeover of America that Trump effectively doesn't want to leave. He thinks on some level that this, and I don't want to speak for him, but that all of these people are not who they said they are. Like, for example, who's paying for this guy to have that massive flag? And where did he get that massive flag from out the blue like that? And is it shocking that there were color revolutions taking place in Ukraine, that something similar may be taking place in the US? Do you believe that? And let me get your take on that.
It's not impossible, right? I mean, look, I certainly think like the odds of that scenario that, you know, this is about the government, Trump teeing up a possible declaration of a state of emergency with a view towards establishing martial law, suspending elections, and remaining in power. You know, what are the odds of that? Well, the odds are not zero, right?
Yeah.
They ought to be, but they're not zero. And so, you know, are they 50% or better? Probably not. But, you know, I mean, somewhere around 20%, I'd say, which is
take it on the flip side.
Than it
also,
ought to be, you know, and Trump knows, by the way, when he leaves power, he's like Netanyahu becomes re-exposed to some criminal prosecutions, right? He's cool right now. He's in the get out of jail free card as long as he lives at 1600. But that all comes to an end, you know, in a few years. So he's got to be thinking about that. In terms of the Mexican flags and stuff, I mean, I have some LA connections, right? I was the cartoonist at the LA Times. I did talk radio out there at KFI Radio in LA for years.
Yeah.
And so And so I spent a lot of time in LA, in the LA area, and so I've seen these Mexican flags before, and it's a very, like, when Angelinos rebel, there's sort of there were even Mexican flags during the 1992 Rodney King uprising.
Were there?
There were. I mean,
See,
basically,
Ted, this is why I love you on the show, man, because I would have never known that. And
it's
you
sort
just
of
know
a
it.
generic.
Yeah.
It's sort of a generic sign of leftism, primarily Chicano, like from the 1960s activism. So basically, like, in the Southland, right, if you're Hispanic, basically everyone just assumes you're under the umbrella of Mexican. Like, all
Okay.
Latinos are like conflated. And so at a
Mexicans.
certain point, Latinos started to embrace that and sort of, take the piss on it and be like, okay, yeah, we're all Mexicans. Like, what kind of Mexican are you? Oh, I'm a Venezuelan Mexican. I'm a Colombian Mexican. Well, I'm a Puerto Rican Mexican. And so it became sort of like a thing at protests. And, Mexican flags are easy to buy right by the Mexican border, right? So
I see.
it's a local politics thing. I mean, the politics of these people are not really particularly concerned about the national optics.
They should be.
They're continuing. They should be. They're continuing a tradition of rebellion that really goes back to, Zapata and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
So it's really about leftism in general. Even like whites and blacks and other people who like rebel in Southern California, sometimes, you'll see them at a protest with a Mexican flag. So it's like, that's what it is. And I mean, it's fodder for Fox News, but it's
So
not.
that's not shocking, is your point. That's normal
Well,
for LA.
it's it's like, look, I was telling my friend Scott Stantis this yesterday. I mean, I would love, personally, as a leftist, I would love all our protesters to look like the civil rights marchers with their skinny ties and thin
Yes.
lapels, and and in their Sunday best dresses with
Yes.
the beautifully hand lettered signs that say
I am a man. Yeah.
They're gorgeous, and it's impossible for the biggest racist piece of shit white person to look at that and say these are bad people,
Yeah.
right? And so, like, when our protesters are scruffy and sweaty and young and pierced and tattooed, and like, so it might be harder for quote unquote middle America to relate to them, but the point is, as Rumsfeld would say, you go to the protest with the protesters you have. I mean,
Not the ones you want.
uprise. I mean, rebellion is rebellion, and I'll take it in any form.
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess the point is the explanation is needed. I don't know what good it does, but it's like, it's like, but if you're seeking to wonder what the fuck they're thinking, this is what the fuck they're thinking.
That's what they're thinking.
Yeah.
The other question goes to the other side of it. Okay, let's say this is not being pushed by Trump. Are the leftist groups paying for this? I mean,
I sincerely doubt that. Let me put it this way, like, in significant amounts. I mean, there's
real quick, I'm just pointing out, there are several events. There are over, Jesus Christ, this is like thousands of political events planned on June 14th alone.
Mm-hmm.
There's nobody planning for this? They're just doing it spontaneously?
Yeah, no, I mean, seriously, I'm seeing them pop up on my Facebook. There's all sorts of progressive and leftist groups who, they're seeing what's going on. Like, just yesterday here in New York, we had our first major protest about this issue. And, I was privy, I saw all the, I was CC'd on all of the, planning materials and stuff. I saw that stuff. I'm not part of the planning group or anything, but the point is I'm on these mailing lists. And it's like, you could see it was organic. It's real. These are groups that are around, and they, this is the spaces they occupy, and they're like, this is happening, and we need to stand up in our community. It's kind of funny that it took so long in New York, because here's where, we had our New Yorkers dragged off the streets by ICE, very close to where I live right now in Manhattan at Columbia University, and so it's taken a while. Things often originate in California, cultural trends. And so,
it just kind of spread through the country.
Yeah.
I guess, what is it? I accept the protests, right? I agree with you that I kind of wish that these guys were wearing suits, holding the sign and saying, I'm a man, because that was kind of the point. Like, but as I was telling somebody else, King and his protesters went through classes in order to not respond when they were getting beat by cops,
Yep.
to be peaceful, to take the punches and to take the beatings, because that was kind of the point. You're putting your body on the line so people can see, look at how bad they are. Look at what we are doing. We're not doing anything but, peaceful protests, and they're responding in this way. When I see them breaking windows, going into Nike shops or Adidas shops, breaking through a sushi restaurant. For fuck's sake, why are you breaking into a sushi restaurant? That looks bad. And my main issue with it is that when Donald Trump is sending in the National Guard and stuff like that, does the public ultimately side with him on it, saying this is chaos, and this is chaos for an issue that we ultimately agree with him on, because they may not know chapter and verse of the goon squad that he's been sending all around the country to do this?
Basically, people have to. Look, I agree with you. It's bad optics. In an ideal scenario, you'd have an organized left-wing cadre who is in charge of these protests, and at the first sign of looting, for example, they would stop the looting,
Right.
using violence if need be to stop
Right.
it. That discipline. I think about, like, in the Chinese Civil War that culminated in the communist victory in 1949. The communist army was extremely disciplined, and when the army would go through, all armies live off the land, and they would end
Right.
up like eating the farmers' food and their animals. Then when the nationalists would roll through, they'd rape all the local women and steal all the food and be on their way. It was like like locusts going through. But when the communists came through, Mao was very strict about this. You would give an IOU to a farmer for any food that you confiscated, and
Yeah.
then even later on, if that army lost control of that territory, they would send a runner in secretly to make good on the payment to the farmer after the fact. Now the word went out among the farmers, like, you wouldn't believe what happened. This guy, he came back, like, the communists lost this district, but they came back and paid me. They'll be like, no way. And that kind of thing, that discipline, really builds up popular support among the masses, who are fence sitters. And so I agree with you. That's what we would want. This is a conversation that could have taken place under Richard Nixon, right? Where Richard Nixon
That's right.
raged in favor of the silent majority. This is Trump, like, grew up during Nixon. He and I both, like, know we draw from this, and he's playing out of the Nixon playbook. Like, this is sending in the Guard, sending in the troops. Let's beat up the dirty hippies. Put in some, restore some discipline. And so, what's the political aftermath?
Right there. That's what I'm curious.
Is that basically you end up with nothing settled. Half the country thinks that that the state is fascist and is trying to crack down on people who are just trying to make the world a better place. The other half of the country thinks that the cities and minorities and foreigners and the hippies are out of control and deserve everything they get. And there's no and then even after the uprisings are over and, like, the Vietnam War ended and the protests ended, everyone went back to their homes, but nobody ever agreed on what any of it meant. And so it keeps the same discussion keeps popping up.
So you think it's just a draw ultimately? Like, when this finishes out,
it's like
peters out into a draw.
It's like the Civil War. The Southerners really never agreed that they should have lost. They lost, but they're kind of like, they're surly about it. It's not like the Germans. The Germans know they lost and think it was good that they lost. That's different. Then society can move on. But
KJ, give me 1 second. Okay. If this is a draw, Trump is only month 4?
Yeah.
He's not changing policy.
No,
it looks like a standoff.
It's gonna get worse. Look, people are gonna get shot. When you send soldiers in, just think about it. If you and I together, right? We're in the National Guard. We're sent to LA. We're wearing heavy body armor. It's 85 degrees, on the street with, like, the sun reflecting off the asphalt. You may not have really been hydrated enough. I'm not really kidding. And there you are, and there's like nasty people yelling insults at you, making fun of you, like throwing shit at you. You know, you and I might be self-disciplined enough to keep our
I'm
cool,
not.
but
I'm not.
like if there's 1,000 of us, one of us isn't, and someone's gonna shoot someone. Like, fuck you, I'm armed, I don't have to put up with you. That's what's going to happen, and then all of their
All hell
allies
breaks loose.
are going to open fire too. There will be, I mean, protesters will be killed. I mean, this will happen. It's an inevitable result of sending, the military to deal with a civilian situation, which, by the way, is illegal under the Posse Comitatus.
That's what I thought. Okay, so I'm not insane on this. I kept saying military is not supposed to be on U.S. soil. That's
No.
not their jobs.
No. Yeah, this is a literally a crossing the Rubicon moment. Literally, the military was not supposed to enter Rome. That's exactly what's happening here. Look, he can invoke the Insurrection Act.
But this is not an insurrection.
But you'd have to declare it. Yeah, the thing is, I said January 6th wasn't an insurrection. Because if it had succeeded, it would not have overthrown the federal government. If this succeeds, let's just say the whole city of Los Angeles is declared an independent republic, it's still not trying to overthrow the federal government. So, like, the point is that, like, it's not an insurrection. It's like, but he could argue it, and it would work through obviously the ACLU would go to court, and all these other groups would go to court. But it would, the courts are slow. That's one Trump's big superpower in his second term. The system is slow. I'm fast. That's his superpower.
Ted Rall, fantastic, Ted. You're always great.
Thank you.
Because I think that's the conversation, right? Like, he's just started his term,
mm-hmm.
and you have all of these protests as a direct result. Let's say that there's nothing else behind it other than organic protests, and it's not like he's stopped.
He's going to shoot some cute girl. It's going to be on TV. And that's when things are going to start to turn ugly, and people are going to, a lot of his people will turn against him the way they turned against Richard Nixon.
You think so?
Yeah, the optics. Yeah, it'll just be like you went too far.
I don't know. MAGA seems to be cultish, but maybe.
Yeah, it's like they say, right? Like the boxing thing. Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face.
Punched in the face.
Everyone has a plan until CNN is constantly on loop, showing some beautiful 22-year-old girl, her face blown off by a National Guardsman for no good reason.
That Trump sent in, or worse, even a Marine.
Good luck with your messaging now.
Ted Rall, political cartoonist, syndicated columnist, host of TMI Morning Show. It comes on at 10 a.m. immediately after this. Also deprogram with John Kiriakou at various hours. I'll go with that. He also has a book out, What's Left. Definitely check him out. Ted Rall, he's fantastic. Thank you, Ted.
Thanks, Jamal. Talk to you soon.
You have a good one, man. Be safe.
All right, you too. Bye.